They say success changes you, but no one talks about how it isolates you. To the world, I'm Donovan, billionaire, tech magnate, investor, philanthropist. The magazines call me a genius. The tabloids label me a mystery. But if you ask the man staring at his reflection in the backseat mirror of a Mercedes S-Class, wearing a press chauffeur's uniform and cap, I'd say I'm just a man who's forgotten what it means to trust. I wasn't born into wealth. I earned every decimal in my bank account. My first memory of ambition wasn't in some high-rise boardroom. It was in a rusted trailer on the outskirts of Dayton, Ohio. My mom cleaned houses. My dad disappeared before I could pronounce his name. I was raised by a woman who worked double shifts and still managed to read me science books at night. She taught me grit. She taught me loyalty. And she taught me that the world doesn't hand you anything. You fight for it every inch of the way. High school was survival. I sold computer repair services out of my locker and fixed broken boxes just to afford a second-hand laptop. Nights were for coding, learning C++ from pirated PDFs while others were out partying. I had no safety net, just a dream stitched together with desperation and caffeine. At 19, I built my first app, an AI-based scheduling assistant. It failed spectacularly. The algorithm was solid, but I didn't know the first thing about pitching to investors. One meeting after another, doors slammed. Smirks. Shrugs. You're too young. You need experience. Come back after grad school. But I couldn't afford grad school. I barely afforded ramen. So I pivoted. 3 years later, my startup, Synthex, caught fire, an AI-driven logistics platform that solved one of the most overlooked problems in supply chains. I had no Ivy League pedigree, just cold sweat and sleepless nights. But I listened to my clients, adapted ruthlessly, and reinvested every dollar back into the company. By 28, I was sitting across from the biggest venture capitalists in Silicon Valley. And this time, they weren't smirking. But success didn't feel the way I imagined. You hit your first million, then 10, then 100. You buy the penthouse, the car, the watch. And then one day, you're lying on a memory foam mattress, wondering why the silence feels so loud. That's when I met Alara. She wasn't like the others. She didn't care about the watch, the car, or even my title. I met her at a gallery event I wasn't supposed to attend. She was an art history major working part-time to support her sick brother. Her laugh, God, it made the room warmer. Her eyes didn't glaze over when I talked about my work. She asked questions, real ones. She made me feel seen. 6 months later, I proposed. But the deeper we got, the louder the doubt became. I'd been burned before. Too many times. People smiled at my face and whispered to lawyers behind my back. I wasn't just a man anymore. I was an asset. A trophy. A wallet. Every woman I dated before Alara had eventually asked for something. An introduction. A fund. A small business idea. I wanted to believe she was different. I needed her to be. But the paranoia crept in like a virus. So I did something ridiculous. I told her I was going away on a business trip for 2 weeks. In reality, I disguised myself. Got a trusted associate to coach me. Used one of the unused town cars from our private fleet. And applied for a job under a pseudonym, Donnie Kane, at the high-end concierge service that Alara often used for rides to her volunteer work. I wanted to see who she was when she thought I wasn't looking. I became her driver. And that's where everything began to fall apart. The thing about disguises is, eventually, you forget you're wearing one. I picked her up every morning for 6 days straight. Alara didn't recognize me. The beard stubble, the tinted glasses, the altered voice, it worked. She called me Donnie, gave polite hellos, always sat in the back seat, usually quiet, sometimes humming to herself. She was still beautiful, but now I saw her through a lens I'd never dared look through before. Truth without filters. The first few days were uneventful. She'd asked to be dropped off at the local children's hospital where she volunteered. I waited outside for hours, just watching. Kids laughed when she came in. Nurses hugged her. Parents leaned on her shoulder in quiet gratitude. She wasn't pretending. For a moment, I felt ashamed, like a thief, sneaking into someone's sacred space. But then came the seventh day. She told me to take her to the Carlton Hotel. Strange. We had no plans there. She wasn't dressed for volunteering, heels, a navy blue dress, gold necklace I'd never seen before. I adjusted the rear view mirror slightly, trying to read her face. She was nervous. She walked in and didn't come out for nearly 2 hours. When she did, she looked different. Smudged lipstick, wrinkled hemline. She didn't say a word as I drove her back. I asked casually, "Everything all right, miss?" She smiled at the window. "Just a meeting." Something inside me cracked. Over the next few days, the routine continued. Hospital in the morning, hotel in the afternoon. Sometimes she'd go to an upscale restaurant afterward. One evening, I watched her through the side mirror. She was laughing over dinner with a tall man in a designer suit, mid-40s, gray temples, arrogant smirk. He wasn't just anyone. He was one of my investors. Conrad Vale, multi-millionaire venture capitalist. Married, 2 children. And the same man who once told me, "Never mix business and love. It'll gut you when you least expect it." Now I knew why he said it. I drove home that night, hands trembling on the steering wheel. Part of me wanted to believe I was wrong, that there was an explanation. Maybe a family emergency, a client meeting, something, anything. But the look she gave him, it was intimate, familiar. Nothing professional about it. Still, I needed proof. I recorded nothing. I had too much integrity, or maybe pride, to stoop that low. But I memorized every detail. The way she touched his arm. The lipstick on his collar when he walked out 10 minutes after her. I knew what I saw. I just couldn't believe it. This woman, who prayed over my scars, who stayed up with me during investor calls, who told me she wanted a simple life, was entertaining a man who saw people like me as tools, who had openly mocked my background at a conference just 2 years ago. But maybe that was the point. Maybe I wasn't the escape for her. Maybe he was. The final straw came on day 10. I picked her up from her place, same time as always. She looked tired, didn't speak much, said she wasn't going to the hospital that day. Instead, she asked me to take her to a florist in the Upper West Side, then to a nursing home, then finally to a law firm downtown. She was holding documents when she got back in the car. I couldn't help myself. Big day. She paused. Yeah. Preparing for a future I'm not sure I'll have. That hit me like a sucker punch. What did she mean by that? I dropped her off, parked around the corner, waited. 10 minutes later, Conrad pulled up in a sleek black Porsche. She got in his car. And just like that, my world tilted. That night, I pulled into my penthouse garage, changed out of the uniform, and stared at myself in the mirror. I wasn't looking at Donovan Cade, the billionaire tech tycoon. I was looking at a man who built an empire but couldn't protect his heart. I should have confronted her right then, demanded answers, thrown the truth on the table like a hand of aces. But I didn't. Not yet. I needed to understand why. What drove someone like her, so pure, so different, to lie, to betray, to cheat? And that question haunted me more than any answer ever could. Betrayal doesn't kill you. It lingers, like smoke in the lungs, like the faint scent of her perfume on the seat where she sat as you drove her straight into someone else's arms. The next morning, I didn't show up as Donnie. I canceled the car, shut off the phone attached to that alias. I needed distance. Not to heal, there was no healing yet. I needed answers. That evening, I invited her to dinner. Our place. The one with the floor-to-ceiling windows and the view of the skyline we used to stand in front of, dreaming out loud about someday. She showed up right on time, wearing that soft lavender sweater I once said made her eyes look like amethysts. She smiled when I opened the door. I tried to smile back. Failed. Something wrong, she asked, setting her purse down. I nodded. We need to talk. Her body stiffened. She folded her hands in front of her like she was preparing for a storm. Ilara, I said slowly, do you love me? She blinked. Of course I do. Then tell me, I said. Where were you 3 days ago after the florist? She stared at me. Why are you asking me that? Because I already know the answer. There was a pause. Then she said something I'll never forget. Then why are you asking me to lie? The silence between us grew so thick, I could feel it pressing against my skin. She stepped forward. Donovan, I know. I blinked. Know what? Her voice didn't shake. I know you've been following me, driving me, watching me. My knees almost gave out. You knew. Not at first, but the way Donnie adjusted the mirror. The way he said my name once, like you do. And then that tiny scar behind your ear from the accident in San Diego. You forgot to cover it one day. She sat down on the couch, as calm as a surgeon before an incision. I didn't say anything because I needed to know what you were doing. Why the man I love, the man who says he trusts me, would rather play detective than just ask me what's wrong. Now I was the one on trial. You were with Conrad Vale. Yes, she said, but not how you think. Ilara, I said, voice rising, I saw you with him. I saw the hotel, the dinners. I saw you get in his car. Tell me how any of that looks innocent. She looked me straight in the eye. Because it wasn't a secret affair. It was a secret plan. I stopped breathing for a second. My brother, she said, voice finally cracking, has been battling leukemia. You know that. What I never told you is that his condition got worse. Much worse. The treatment he needs is experimental. Not covered by insurance. $2 million up front. She stood, pacing now. I didn't want your money, Donovan. I never wanted to be that woman. The one everyone whispers about. Of course she married him, he's rich. I didn't want to be a burden to your empire. Ilara. I went to Conrad because he runs a medical innovation fund. He owed my family a favor. My father saved his mother's life years ago when he was a kid. I begged him to help. The meetings were about terms. The hotel was a setup for a private conversation where press wouldn't catch us. The dinner? That was when he finally agreed to fund it, if I signed an NDA. The words hit me like bricks wrapped in guilt. And the law office? I asked. She held my gaze. That was where I signed the agreement to transfer full rights of the fund's returns to my brother's treatment facility. I didn't take a dime for myself. The room went quiet. I had never felt so small. She walked over, gently placing the contract in my hand. You think money reveals people, but sometimes it reveals you. You say you can't trust anyone, but maybe that's because you don't trust yourself to be loved without your bank balance attached. I sat down. Hard. Ilara, I'm so sorry. I know, she whispered, sitting beside me. But this changes us. I know. We didn't talk for a long time after that. We just sat, side by side, in the echo of our broken illusions. That night, I lay in bed thinking about the boy I used to be. The one who promised himself he'd never be vulnerable, never be taken advantage of, never love without a contract. That boy had built walls, mansions, empires, but he'd also built a prison. And the woman who held the key? I nearly lost her because I couldn't recognize love without suspicion. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't come with fireworks or forgiveness wrapped in a bow. It comes in silence, in long pauses, in the spaces between two people who once dreamed together, now learning how to breathe in the same room again. After that night, Ilara didn't leave me. But she didn't stay either, not entirely. She asked for space. I respected it. Weeks passed. No dinner dates. No shared coffee. No soft goodnight texts. Just the occasional update about her brother's progress, always signed with a name she hadn't used in a while. Like a door left cracked open. Not an invitation. But not a goodbye either. During those weeks, I turned inward. I realized something. I had spent my whole life chasing security. Financial, emotional, reputational. Every decision I made was rooted in fear. Fear of being poor again. Fear of being powerless. Fear of being loved for what I had instead of who I was. It's easy to build an empire when you're running from ghosts. Much harder to stop and ask, what's it for? So, I did something I had never done before. I unplugged. I took a leave of absence from Synthex. Not a PR stunt. No press release. Just a clean break. I told my board, I built this company so it could survive without me. Now's the time to prove it. They looked at me like I'd gone mad. Maybe I had. I donated $50 million to leukemia research in Alara's brother's name, anonymously. Not as a grand gesture, just because it felt right. I started showing up at the hospital myself, sometimes helping with data systems, sometimes just reading to kids who reminded me of the boy I used to be. And then one day, I saw her. Alara. She was in the hallway, wearing scrubs, her hair pulled back, no makeup. She looked tired and beautiful. Our eyes met. She walked up slowly. I heard about the donation. I thought it was anonymous, I said, half smiling. You're not very good at hiding, Donovan. Even in chauffeur uniforms. We stood there, awkward and unarmored. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and crayons. Somewhere, a child coughed. I miss you, I said, voice low. She nodded. I know. I was scared. I was too. I didn't trust you. I didn't trust myself either, she admitted. I let you believe the worst because I wanted to prove a point. I didn't just want your love, I wanted your faith. She reached out, fingers grazing mine. But I still love you, she whispered. Even after everything. I swallowed hard. Then let's try again. No masks. No fear. Just truth. She looked at me for a long moment, then said the one word I'd been praying for since the day I first drove her. Okay. Fast forward 6 months. We got married in a garden, no press, no billionaires, no designer guest lists. Just family, a few friends, and the laughter of a little boy in remission who walked down the aisle throwing flower petals. Our vows weren't perfect, but they were honest. And that meant everything. I went back to Synthex eventually, but different. I stopped chasing the next comma in my net worth. Started mentoring young founders from low-income communities. I funded scholarships, created an incubator for underdog startups, and finally launched the foundation my mother always dreamed of before cancer took her. People asked if I was slowing down. Truth is, I finally started speeding up in the right direction. They say you can't have it all. I think they're wrong. But you can't fake having it all either. Wealth without purpose is a gilded cage. Love without trust is a ticking bomb. And success without self-awareness is just a more expensive form of failure. I learned that in a Mercedes. Wearing a cap that didn't fit. Driving a woman who thought she was being driven, when really, she was leading me back to myself.